Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician, and this is Holomancer. Today we have prepared a guide of the worst legendary cards in the standard format. These are the cards that you can safely disenchant.
When we made a video about the 20 most important cards that should have left standard, we also conducted a survey. We asked you how many legendary cards you had from a specific list. The results of your vote have caused us to create this video.
It turns out that only 30% of viewers had most of the legendary cards, despite the fact that most of our viewers have been playing for a long time. Only from 3 to 5% of our viewers are new players.
We are convinced that you can have more influential cards. We have decided to help optimize your collection. To do this, we have studied a similar guide from HearthstoneTopDecks.com, and also calculated the average rate of popularity for all legendary cards, based on the results of 2 years of availability in Standard.
After this, we divided all of the cards into several different categories, based on their popularity. Each category is represented by a number of stars. The less stars the category has, the safer the cards in the category are for disenchanting.
Overall, we have 123 legendary cards in Standard. Unfortunately, most of these cards are not competitively viable. If you have a small collection of cards, disenchanting bad legendary cards might be a good decision.
However, you must always remember that you're gaining 400 dust for a card that costs 1600 dust. You are also limiting your opportunities in tavern brawls, solo adventures, and in wild.
And last, in spite of our determination of the card uselessness, no one can predict how much support some cards will get in future sets.
Without further ado, let's get to our list, and talk about the Rise of Shadows legendary cards. This is one of the most expensive, but at the same time one of the best sets in the history of the game.
For the first time, all 23 legendary cards are used with varying popularity in meta decks. Some of them show rather disgusting results in the meta game, but they still remain interesting to the community. We don't have any cards that are so blatantly useless that we can recommend dusting them. They will be around in Standard for nearly 2 more years, which means that the chance that they will see play at some point is huge.
If you really need dust right now, and you don't want to wait, here are a few candidates for disenchanting from HearthstoneTopDecks.com.
Let's add 2 more cards to this list, Verisa Windrunner and the Boom Reaver. The average popularity of these cards ranges from 0.3 to 0.9%. We gave these cards 2.5 stars. You should remember that after a few more months, the next expansion can provide support for non-effective archetypes such as Plot Twist Warlock, Heal Druid, Dragon Paladin, Silence Priest, and so on.
Let's talk about Boomstay. For almost a year we have been using the Boomstay cards, so we have enough information to identify some trends.
Here are the cards that were not used at all in the meta game. It's unlikely that they will receive support in the future. For this reason, we consider them 0-star cards. This is the safest category for disenchanting.
The second category is 2-star cards. In general, these cards are used in the meta game. They have an average popularity of about 0.4%. Unfortunately, in the current meta they are not used almost at all. In general, all these cards can be found in wild mode, although they only have a popularity of slightly higher than 0.
Separately, we want to talk about Luna's Pocket Galaxy, the Stormbringer, Dr. Morrigan and Flark's Boomzooka. These 4 legendary cards, along with 14 other cards, are being buffed. This is the first time in the history of the game that this is happening. This will definitely lead to an increased interest in these cards, and synergies of the whole set as a whole, so before you destroy them, wait to see if the buff gives any of these cards a second wind.
What should be done with Whizbang the Wonderful?
This is a good question. Thank you.
Hello.
Whizbang the Wonderful is a unique legendary card that allows you to use one random deck recipe. Personally, I prefer to use this card in the first week after the release of each new expansion. This card allows you to try all new cards and mechanics for free. This is useful if you have a small collection, and it is also fun.
According to our data, over 30% of players are ready to disenchant this card. Only you can decide the fate of your Whizbang.
It's time to talk about the Witchwood.
Here are some cards that Hearthstone Top Decks recommends disenchanting. We want to change this list a bit, and get rid of 2 cards. These 2 cards have been replaced by Dollmaster Dorian. Now it is truly a 0-star cards list. These cards have never been used in any meta.
Lady in White is a 1-star card, because it saw play for a while, unlike the other cards in the list. The card was used for nearly 2 months after its release.
Here is a list of 2-star cards. These cards were more noticeable in the metagame, and they appeared more often than single-star cards. Most of these cards had found their place in niche meta decks for some time, then disappeared.
Face Collector is the most popular card from this list right now. 0.5% of rogues use it.
Rastakhan's Rumble is the least impactful set of cards we've ever seen. After the release, most of the cards were not at all interesting to the community.
Some players expected an increase in the influence of cards from Rastakhan's Rumble after the Rise of Shadows release, but that did not happen.
At first glance, the set's legendary cards look quite interesting, but their main problem is their narrow scope of application. Frankly, I like most of these legendary cards, and I think they have potential.
We have been following these cards for only 6 months. This is definitely not enough time to make concrete conclusions, but we have managed to determine some trends.
Hearthstone Top Decks recommends safely getting rid of 4 cards. We have greatly expanded this list. Let's start with 0-star cards. Without further ado, this list includes Grifta and Hiriek the Bat.
Here are the 1-star cards. These cards at least appeared in some meta decks, although they have terrible average popularities in standard and wild modes.
Finally, here are the 2-star cards. In general, these cards were more noticeable in the metagame and appearing about 2 times more often than previous cards with single-star rating. At the moment, only 2 cards can be seen in standard meta decks, Warmaster Vo1, and Akali the Rhino.
In spite of all these statistics, you should remember that some of these cards may get a buff from the developers in the next 4 months.
The life cycle of this set is the shortest. A massive buff of cards and potential synergy supports in the next expansion are the last opportunities to make Rastakhan's Rumble viable.
And finally, let's talk about Classic. The Hearthstone Classic set is the core set in the game, and all of these cards will be a big part of the standard format for a long time.
This set contains a large number of very powerful cards, but at the same time, it has a huge number of very terrible cards that will probably never be used in the meta game. Perhaps in the future, developers will want to buff some cards. For example, Illidan may be the main contender for this.
Are you serious?
We understand that we put forward too many assumptions in this video, but the developers have become completely unpredictable.
Now let's go back to our lists. The Hearthstone Top Decks team has identified 8 of the worst legendary cards. We want to add 3 more to this list. Now this list looks fully complete.
And finally, the 1-star list. You should definitely be very careful disenchanting these cards.
Of course, their average popularity over the past 2 years is incredibly low, but in the past they were very powerful cards, and the players really wanted to get them for their decks.
The only exception of course is Mukla. Actually, we changed our minds. King Mukla is the best card in the game. Forgive us, Lord King.
We want to ask you a new question. Have you ever disenchanted legendary cards? Is it worth getting rid of bad cards?
For 5 years of the game, I only got rid of legendary copies, and once disenchanted a golden legendary. Now I have enough resources, and sable cards for my collection. What about you?
We created a YouTube poll. Find the button on the screen, please vote.
Also, share your opinion in the comments.
Finally, we want to say a few words about the closure of Hearthstone.
It was not just another website. It was the best Hearthstone forum, a huge data archive, a place where you could find very interesting decks, and a lot of other things.
Hearthstone team, you loved Hearthstone with all your heart, and made a truly titanic efforts to create a really unique place.
Guys, you are the best. We will always remember your contribution to the game.
Hearthstone, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks!
Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for being with us.
And special thanks to Chris for text editing.
We will meet in new videos.
Good luck.